What's up, meatbags? It's the chosen one of CG, the Chicano Stanley, the one, the only Frog Tony. And today we're going to be reviewing Immortal Mask from Denelli's. Now, it says it's a 200-page full-color graphic novel, and I think that's not exactly true. It's 182 pages of story, and then you got a nice little section in the back that's sort of a behind-the-scenes, a making of Immortal Mask, if you. Now, I did receive the paperback edition for review purposes. I didn't pay, although I will say if I had to pay, I would have, because I wasn't interested in this project when I seen it. So that's not going to influence my review in any way. Anyone who knows me knows I've poo-pooed on plenty of things that I've gotten for free, much to the chagrin of a video game company or two. Now, along with the main story, there is a prologue and a bonus story at the end. So it's like three parts, and we're going to discuss each one individually because there is art style changes, pace, structuring changes. So we're going to get to all of that as separate. Now, because I have the physical copy, I don't have scans available. I wasn't able to scan anything in for this review. However, Denelli's.com does have several preview images that we're going to use because really there's nothing specific that needs to be pointed out. There's no egregious art. There's nothing that looks off or funny that we have to go into big detail on. So for the purposes of this review, the preview images are good enough for what we need to discuss. Now I'm going to try to go spoiler free at the beginning here, then I will transition into a spoiler filled review towards the end. You'll know when we get there. But we're going to go through all three parts, and we're going to start with the prologue. Now, the prologue tells the story of the 1930s Immortal Mask. It is told without dialogue, strictly through images. As you can see from the sample image, the story opens up with the Immortal Mask chained up by this gang of ne'er-do-wells. The main villain is this man here in red. He has some sort of fire powers. We're not really given an explanation, like I said. It is all told without dialogue. Now, in the actual book, the images aren't as crisp as they are here. There is sort of a yellow haze, almost like making it look like an older comic from the time frame. So the images here are popping just a little bit more than they are in the book. I don't know, if that's due to the stylistic choice or if it's due to the printing process, but they are popping a little bit more here on the sample images. Now, using his Immortal Mask powers, the Immortal Mask does escape, fights this villain who, like I said, has the power of fire. He's able to heat up objects. He takes a rebar, tries to attack the Immortal Mask with that. In this fight, we see a couple abilities from the Immortal Mask. We see what he can do. We can see what the villain does. I'm not going to give away the ending of this, but I will say it was not my favorite part of the book. Like I said, without the dialogue, without really knowing what's going on, you kind of thrust into it. Some assumptions need to be made. The stylistic choice, like I said, it doesn't pop as well as it does here on the sample images. The images in the book have sort of a haze on them, and that leaves certain details to be missed. It took me about 2 or 3 readings to go over and go, oh, okay, I understand what's going on now. I can see it better. And there's some little clues in there that pertain to the main story that, again, you might miss because of the way it is. Now, the action in this section is fun. There is a clever use of the environment, a clever use of how the villain is defeated. And like I said, there are clues and sort of hints to the bigger story that's going to take place in the main section of the book. But again, I think some people will miss these just because of the way it's presented. Now, the main story of the Immortal Mask, it takes place in the 1970s. It features Benjamin Frost. He's an ex-military turned reporter. He gets an interview with an Edward Lawrence. Edward Lawrence is on death row for a crime he feels he didn't commit. He says he didn't commit it. He was offered plea deals for the entire time of his stay in prison. He's maintained his innocence and never spoken to anyone. However, the day of his execution, he requests that Benjamin Frost interviews him so we can give him some details about what happened. And so this is a huge deal. It's a huge lead for the newspaper. Of course, Benjamin goes out, does the interview, And this kicks off a sort of detective noir story in which Benjamin is going from lead to lead, trying to figure out what's going on, what's happening, why Edward Lawrence was put in jail, whether or not he actually committed the crimes he committed, is there evidence to prove his innocence? All the while, the evil powers that be are trying to stop Benjamin Frost from getting the information, from freeing Edward Lawrence from prison. Like I said, it's a very classic story, told very well. The pacing is good until I want to say the third, last quarter of the book. Uh, Things pick up real quick when the superpowered villains show up. Business picks up real quick. The pacing sort of changes. We get a couple of action scenes that I feel, in my opinion, were a little bit rushed. We get a chase scene again. I think is a little uh, rushed, but all in all, the overall story, is really good. I was interested the whole way. It's a real page turner. I can say that once you start reading it, once you get into it, you're going to want to continue to read it. You're going to want to know what's going on, what's happening. Why is this guy in prison? Did he do it? Did he not do it? Who are these powers that be? And now there are, like I said, a lot of mysteries and a lot of questions in this. There's a couple of conveniences, plot conveniences, as happens in comic books, but nothing that really throws you out of the story, nothing that really takes you out of the moment. Overall, very enjoyable story. And I'm looking forward to the next part because I want to know what happens. Where do we go from here when the story leads off? And again, if you pick up all there are subtle clues, subtle hints in this story that you might miss. I missed them the first time I read it. Not gonna lie, I read it. Then I came back to read it again for this review, and I started picking up things. I was like, wait a minute. Okay, that makes sense. Now I see that. So there's little things in there. You really got to pay attention, or else you're going to miss these subtle clues. Uh, all the characters in the story feel unique, from Benjamin Frost to the way Walter Crumb acts, the former journalist that he's trying to track down during this story. Edward Lawrence. Everyone seems to have their own voice, their own mannerisms, their own way of acting and speaking. So, like I said, they're all fleshed out as well as can be. Certain characters that show up aren't really fleshed out. They lack motivation, characterization. They just hired guns. And really, when it comes down to it, you expect certain kind of characters like that, right? They're not the main characters, not the focus of the book. And because there are so many of them, you're going to get some of them sort of pushed to the wayside as far as characterization goes. They're motivated by money. They're hired to do a job. That's good enough for the story that needs to be told. The art in this, like I said, it is popping just a little bit more here on the computer screen, on the sample images. It is a lot more subtly colored. And again, it could be the paper quality. It could be because I got the paperback edition. It's not glossy. It's not flashy. So maybe the colors are a little bit duller due to the printing. But there are no, like I said, there's no errors. There's no big standout pages. You're like, oh, this looks ugly. This is a bad looking image. Everything is good. Everything looks fine. It's consistent art throughout the whole thing. I enjoy the paneling. It's classic, old school style paneling. No real dynamic things that sort of break up. There's no fancy splash pages. There's no 2-page spreads. There's not any really crazy dynamic paneling, but it works in the story because, like I said, it is a classic noir story. So simple, classic paneling, simple, classic storytelling actually works to its benefit, and it helps and enhances the story. Now, there are, I guess you would call them splash pages. It's hard to really define these because they're faux comic book covers, faux covers throughout the book. They are part of the story, but also not part of the story directly. But they are drawn really well. And again, it enhances the story. When you see all the things, when you put the clues together, you'll understand, and it actually makes the story better. It is those subtle bits of world building, those subtle bits of storytelling that I appreciate, right? And again, this is a sort of noir detective story, classic, trope. You got your reporter who's going to go and what corrupts the city. He's going to go out there and he's going to, dig and investigate despite any sort of danger to himself. It's that classic hero journalism, the idealistic thought of what a journalist is, an investigative journalist. It's all here. Uh, Overall, I would say it's about an 8 out of 10. Fantastic story. Well done. There's a few instances where I'm like, ooh, that's kind of really convenient. But again, we'll get into the spoilers and we'll talk more about that. But again, overall, great story. I enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to more. All the characters work, the dynamics, the chemistry that was written between the characters. Obviously, it's not acted. It's not a movie, so you don't get that. But the way it was written, the dialogue and the back and forth between certain characters, well done. I enjoyed it throughout. No complaints, really. The backup story, or I guess extra story, bonus story, however you want to call it, goes over the 1850s Immortal Mask and sort of an Indiana Jones-esque adventure. Again, told with no dialogue, all through images. This one does feature some really impressive splash pages, 2-panel spreads. It's fantastic. Now, these are images from that 1850s Immortal Mask story. However, they're not presented the way the sample page here presents it. It's presented more in a classic, storytelling style. And again, the pictures are beautiful, gorgeous. The story is very interesting. And I have a feeling it's telling more than it seems. I think that seemed to be the key with this book, is it's telling you something, but it's telling you more than you think. And I think in the next issue, they're probably going to go into more detail. Things will be connected better, and you'll sort of understand the story of the Immortal Mask. But all in all, the bonus story, again, it's really good, really well drawn, beautiful images. I will say it's nothing super special. Like, you could probably skip it, and you're not going to really miss out anything yet. Like I said, I have a feeling it is going to connect to something later. But as is, it's just a nice little bonus story there tacked on at the end. Now, the last 16, 17 pages are a sort of behind the scenes making of the Immortal Mask. It shows pencils. It shows the process of how it went from the pencil to the ink to the finalized version. It's very interesting if you are into making comics, or if you're interested in the process of how comics come to be from script to print. It's a nice little section to have. Again, not necessary, but it is a neat little. There's little bits of script, little bits of notes on images, thumbnails, the whole 9 yards. It goes through several panels and how it went, like I said, again, from initial creation to final product. Again, really neat. And if you're interested, or if you're making comics yourself, this is a nice little section to have. Nice to see how other people do it, how you might do it. So really good, really helpful. But again, for the average consumer, it'll be a neat little thing, but I don't think it's a selling point. Looking forward to, and hopefully I've given you enough information to make a decision yourself whether or not you think this is going to be the story for you, whether or not you think this is going to be a comic book you're going to enjoy. Like I said, I enjoyed it. 8 out of 10. I think it was really well done. I do like the differences in storytelling between the prologue, main story, and the sort of extra story. Although I didn't enjoy them as much as the main story, I do like the subtle differences in storytelling approach. Other than that, nothing much to say. Great book. Looking forward to more from the Immortal Mask. And as always, love, peace, booty grease. I'm out this bitch.